I'm Little CEO from Cut It Out Comics and Cosplay, and welcome to my first time-lapse video. I promised you guys that I was going to show you a little bit of behind the scenes when it comes to making my paper crafts or my paper dolls, and finally here we are. So for the first time, I have decided to pick Garnet as the paper doll I will show you guys today, because Steven Universe has been my most popular cutout series, especially the first series. So I wanted to show you guys Garnet because she's also the most popular out of that series. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video and find it, educational or at least a little entertaining. But I hope you enjoy it. Bye! Hey there guys, it's Little CEO here. I just wanted to offer up a little commentary on what's going on here in this video for people who aren't 100% familiar with the type of art that I make. But this kind of art is called paper cutting. A lot of people aren't very familiar with it, but it's actually a pretty common type of art. If you've ever seen the television show South Park, basically the kind of art that I make looks similar to that. It looks like, cartoon characters who are created out of little pieces of paper glued together. Obviously that show's been animated for a really long time, so it's not exactly the same, but obviously you're here to watch my video so you can see what I do and how long it takes and how complicated it kind of is to make these paper cutouts or these paper dolls. But usually the first step, besides the obvious, which is, I create a sketch, and the sketch has to translate to a cutout. So we have to kind of oversimplify. A lot of people call it minimalism, what I do, which I agree with, but basically kind of minimize the character. I usually do cartoon characters because cartoon characters are already minimalized, so it's actually really easy to kind of translate that over to paper cutouts and dolls. But obviously I just start with a simplified sketch of the character. Then I cut out the pieces of the character from usually computer paper, since I don't mind throwing that away, and then I just trace it over some hard cardstock that'll last longer. Then I cut that out and keep it and store it in these envelopes that you see here in the video with the character's name on the front. And then I can just reuse that. I call it a stencil. I just reuse the stencil over and over and over again, where I just trace over it on top of the colored paper and then cut it out. But to really kind of begin with the cutout, the most important part obviously is the colored cardstock that I use to make the characters. Finding the exact colors for these characters is actually one of the hardest parts of making these paper dolls. You would think they would be really simple, but then you come across shows like Steven Universe, for example, that uses a lot of different variations of one color. For example, like Ruby's like 4 or 5 different colors of red. Even the black that you see on a character like that is just a really dark version of red that looks black. So it's kind of hard when you come to Steven Universe to kind of find the right colors, because what happened is I started out with a pack that I bought in college when I was doing color and composition that had like maybe 2 or 3 versions of one color, like blue or red or whatever. But then I came along to a series like Steven Universe that uses so many pastels and different variations of colors that it kind of became more complicated. So I had that first package of colored cardstock that I was using, but then I ended up having to buy like 3 more packages. I bought one that was just neutral colors, like brown and grays and peaches, basically skin tone colors, that sort of thing. And then I had to buy another one that was all bright, like neon colors, and then one that was just pastels that you would see like during Easter time, for example, which basically kind of helped to kind of remedy the whole thing, especially with Steven Universe, because it's just so varied. But then when we come along obviously to Garnet, and Garnet's kind of complicated because her first design was a little bit different than the current design, which is the one I decided to go with. So obviously she's just an amalgamation of blue and red, so it's kind of fun to play with. But anyway, obviously that was kind of the hardest thing to do when it came to Garnet especially. But anyway, so the hardest part is just finding those right colors to kind of go with the character. But what I'm doing right now, obviously in the video, is tracing over the stencils that you see in the corner there on the side of the cutting board, because I would just like to keep them out of the way or whatever. But basically I am just tracing the stencils over and over and over again. This is probably the I don't want to say the worst part, but not the funnest part of making these cutouts. It's pretty tedious and time consuming, mostly because tracing's not very hard. Obviously, most kids start out, you know, when they want to move into art, they start out tracing. But the issue with tracing when it comes to making these cutouts is that you have to be so particular, you have to be so exact, or else the cutout doesn't come out looking right. You know, you have to hold that stencil in exactly the right spot and apply the right amount of pressure so that it doesn't slip and slide underneath your fingertips, or it doesn't move when the pencil pushes against it. All sorts of things like that. So this is pretty much the not most boring. I don't want to say boring because I know everybody else thinks it's really fascinating, but it's kind of the most boring part for me. It's not my favorite part. You know, obviously I still do it anyway because you can't avoid it, but it's not my favorite part, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because, you know, you just have to be so very exact, because honestly, these paper cutouts are very much like puzzles, in my opinion, when I look at them. So it's like, if you don't cut that piece right, you know, if it's too small, if it's too big, if it's not just right, they don't fit together properly. And if they don't fit together properly, then the resulting cutout doesn't look like it should. Usually if they don't fit together properly, it kind of shatters the illusion that you're trying to create with the layering. So that's kind of the toughest part. You know, it's a lot of pressure on me, obviously, that I'm putting on myself. But yeah, so this is not my favorite part, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But obviously everybody else thinks it's really fascinating and interesting, and I'm just over here like, I don't want to do this. But sometimes if you come and see me at a convention or an art show or a vendor show or whatever, I'll usually be sitting there making a cutout because I'm always trying to restock. So people like seeing it, but I don't really like doing it. Yeah, I think it's not exactly my favorite because of, like I said, how stressful it is kind of for me. You know, if I do mess it up, it's like the whole thing is messed up and I just have to go back and start over. So it's kind of annoying. And I think one of the reasons why it's so annoying is because when it comes to using these stencils, it's like when I trace them, I have to trace them all really close together, kind of in a cluster. That way I make the most use out of the paper and I don't waste any paper because it is expensive, you know, and obviously, and I just hate being wasteful. So it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult when you're trying to cut things so close together because, you know, if you're not using the right amount of pressure, you don't stop at the right junction, you know, you can slice into another piece of the cutout and it's like, then you have to start over again and trace it all over again, which I love doing. But, you know, so it's kind of annoying, but, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. But yeah, I mean, obviously I use an X-Acto knife, as you can see, for most of the cutting. But, you know, I use an X-Acto knife mostly to get those really straight edges, and then I use a pair of scissors for rounder edges because it gives me a little bit more control whenever I use some scissors. So, yeah. But yeah, so we're just gonna skip this part, but normally there's a little part in there once I've cut out all the little pieces where I use a white eraser to get the pencil lines off of the cutouts, or not the cutouts, the pieces that I'm trying to use to make a cutout. Because what happens is when I trace over the little pieces of the stencil, you know, sometimes you just can't help it, the pencil slips or it goes a little too far past the stencil, you know, and gets onto the paper. So I usually use a white eraser to go back and erase those lines because if you don't, if you leave them on there, they kind of shatter, again, the illusion of the 3D effect that happens with the layering. So you just have to go back and erase it, but I obviously cut that because it's terribly, terribly boring and no one wants to see me erase 300 times in a video. But that's pretty tough too, because you have to be really careful when you're erasing, or else you can either tear the little pieces of paper or you can crumple them, all of which obviously if you tear it, you destroy the cutout and you have to start again. Or if you crumple it, again, it shatters the illusion of the 3D effect. So you can't obviously be having any of that. But yeah, here I'm using obviously white glue, just simple Elmer's glue, because, you know, it doesn't show up because it's a clear glue. But I like to use the Q-tips because it gives me a little bit more control over where the glue is at and how far it spreads and keeping it away from the edges and that sort of thing. And then I can also use it to wipe glue away if it does leak out from underneath the cutout piece, which is extremely helpful. So funnily enough, Q-tips are not supposed to be used for cleaning your ears. They are actually supposed to be used in arts and crafts like I am doing right now. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, this gluing part is actually, it's really funny because I can't stand the gluing part. Not because it's hard or anything, but it's like, I don't know what it is about gluing the pieces together. I must have made hundreds of cutouts, but I have never ever glued one cutout together correctly ever in the entire time that I've made any of them. It's really hard because you get glue on your fingertips, and once you get the glue on your fingertips, you can either transfer it to the paper and ruin the cutout that you've just designed, or, you know, the glue attracts dirt and covers your fingertips with dirt, and then if you touch the paper with the dirt, obviously it leaves like a smudge, or it leaves, you know, an oil print, and it's just, again, ruins the 3D effect from the layering of the paper. So it's like, But yeah, I don't think I've done it one single time correctly. Just really funny. I know people look at them and probably don't even notice, but I can look at every single cutout I've ever made and see exactly where I went wrong on it. So it's like constantly a learning process for me, like learning to use the Q-tips, you know, learning to use my X-Acto knife, for example, like I am there, to lift up pieces so that I can slip the glued pieces underneath, or to adjust glued pieces on top of things, you know, because the X-Acto knife has that sharp tip on the end. You can kind of grab the paper without damaging it, of course, and then move the paper around where you need it at that moment, so that's always great. But I think the hardest part about this gluing thing is that there's no 100% way for me to do it, if that makes sense. I'm always eyeballing it. It's not like there's lines, you know, it's not like there's little arrows or whatever telling you where each piece needs to go. I have to look at, for example, there's that garnet on the side there as a reference for what I want it to end up looking like. But when it comes to gluing it together, it's kind of just, you know, it's kind of happening as I'm doing it. You know, if I don't glue that chest portion onto her body just right, then her body ends up being too tall for a 4x6 backing because her afro is so tall. You know, if I don't spread out her legs wide enough, then because she's standing straighter, she's taller than she normally is. So it's a toughie. It's a tough situation. You know, it's never going to be 100%, you know, what I want it to be, but it's always gonna look good. They'll just vary. It's very funny. They always look the same, but they just vary slightly, and I can always tell how they do. But there you are. Those are the gals. They are the cutie patooties that you're gonna see at every convention, you know, comic book convention, craft show, art show that I will be at. And you can buy them from my Etsy store, actually, online, if you never see me at a show, and then give them to your friends. So, bye-bye! I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned a thing or two, or at least I hope you were entertained. But I guess we will see you in the next one. See you later.